Yeah, so it is a make design process. Is that when you're teaching these things, it's often sometimes the confluence between teaching and the actual doing blurs, has an ambiguity. So you know, if I was a maths teacher and there was a subject, what I call the subject knowledge, or whatever knowledge it is that I need to give you, I can deliver it in a number of ways. Yeah, but it's essentially a relationship that is pedagogic. If I'm a designer or a fine artist or a practitioner or whatever, I have different strategies for that, because the making is the experience is part of the learning. The experience of making is part of the learning, and I think that's a very key thing.
The people actually have a funny problem with the word teaching, and which is why talking about pedagogy does give the idea of a kind of philosophy of teaching and learning, which we've recently discovered. You might be aware of the National Student Survey. When you finish a degree course, you all get asked to fill in a form and say, actually, this is not doing it. Good to do it. Yeah, that's right. I don't know how they did it.
I've talked to them.
And we discovered recently that some of our students, in the final year of the degree course in design, we do a major project. And almost all of the support we get is through tutorial groups and studio teaching. And some of the students filled the form in and said, oh no, we didn't get any teaching. Because there were no lectures. And actually we had complaints that there weren't enough lectures in the final year. Well, actually the idea is by then you've learned all that stuff and the real learning is in the doing. But clearly, we've not, there are people going around, and I expect architecture students to understand this implicitly, but we're going around who actually imagine that teaching is only what is done by a formal person standing in front of the class giving a sort of didactic presentation. There's another word, I don't know what that means, didactic. What does it mean?
Didactic?
Yes.
Directed, so.
I thought it meant. So
it's like onomatopoeia. Didactic.
Oh, that's right,
yeah.
So that's one question.
From the student survey, was there anything really specific building-wise that was there?
Oh, right.
No, I don't think so. We've actually...
It's interesting, that.
We've never had a particular problem.
No, but there's no particular question.
Yes, but resources.
Resources, yeah, but not a particular question about...
We've always actually foreground. Now, it may be different between the two areas of media and design and art, three areas, but I'm media here. Because media depends perhaps rather more on technical resources, and there's a bit of a trade-off there. You know, the more cameras you buy, the less space you get. It's kind of the way it seems to work out, isn't it?
No, it's displacement theory.
Well, anyway,
you buy cameras instead of space.
That's right. Yeah. But whereas we haven't got so many cameras, so we get a bit more space. But anyway, in both cases, we've always set out our stall to provide good space and good resources for making. And that seems to have been something that the students have always appreciated. Now, I don't know how much chance you've had yet, but I think you probably should have a look around the Harlem Building, the Sheaf Building, and the new fine art space in Arundel Court. And you'll see the emphasis on space. And you'll see evidence of the wars that have raged over space. So in design, for instance, we have a concept of hub space, which might be not dissimilar to this, where some teaching goes on, but where students can actually go and just get on with their work. Interesting battles about whether to have it at all and what you're allowed to have in it. And we have to be quite subversive, so the idea of having computers in hub space has been a no-no. But then they found that they didn't have enough space for the computers, so we said, oh, you can put them in the hub space. Oh, thanks very much.
That's how you represent that problem, Chris.
Well, that's how it's worked out.
Well,
that's how it's worked out, isn't it? Yeah, but so suddenly we find
we've got meant for hub spaces.
Most of the hub spaces now have some kind of computing going on, simply because actually they didn't have enough room to put the stuff in.
And that's what you wanted, though. You did want that, though.
We've always wanted it.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a space which was about 2/3 the size of this room, and it was shared by about 20+ master's students, sort of land. and it had about 10 computers in it and a little meeting room. Actually, almost the same amount,
Very,
small.
very similar.
Very small, actually half the size of this. And they loved it just because it gave them the working tools for getting on with the work and for communicating and being together.
Well, I think there's something else there. Though. You also, right, I mean, we could ask you the question, how do you use this space and how do you feel about this space? Because I think it's not just what's in here, it's the sense that you can gather in this way and it's yours. You have some ownership over it, because I would have thought the most important thing for you in this context. Am I wrong?
No, there is a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
Because the issues we have, which are related to what Chris has been saying about the arguments for hub spaces, for instance, is that, and this is a bit of a risky concept, is that my sense of how learning is conducted generally in HE, in the notion of module structures and programs, is that it's an atomised experience. In other words, student support, you get a whole load of central things that are offered in an atomised form, surround your learning in your course. Now, I don't think that's true of architecture particularly, but that's true generally of, I would say, the experience of learning at the university. And it's to do with centralisation of certain tasks. So the student actually experiences a very atomised experience. Goes through a very atomised experience.
Some areas don't even have course leaders.
And some areas don't, exactly. So they have a kind of module, enough about that. So partly, it's how you, the subversive notion, and we can say this without risk because you're not my bosses, is to recover and gain ground back to what I would call the molecular experience or the total experience of what you do in a subject. So that and that's represented by a number of little battles or a number of little struggles, one of which is to create hub spaces, one of which is to regroup certain spaces. So that, for instance, we have some studios down below, an animation studio over here, teaching rooms that can be in another building. So when students have lectures on certain things, they go to a totally other building. There's specialist computer facilities that do visual effects, which is in another space. So their experience of that is quite, not only is it atomised at the level of, but it's atomised at the level of the space. So it reinforces this notion. So we're trying to, as we do in other areas, is trying to bring something which is a kind of connecting the atoms together again, and creating a molecule rather than a set of atoms.
It's also part of the strategy being visible, because we have some spaces, and again, I think this is much easier to do in my own area of design, particularly toward art, and less easy for Jeff because of the different balance of technical spaces. But where you have a hub space like this, then you can do things in it which are on show. So when we moved into the Sheath building last year, the graphic design hub space had lots of plywood chairs, just these pale, nice plywood chairs. And the students were given large rolls of sticky back plastic, coloured plastic, and told to treat these chairs as like canvases. Use stick-on coloured plastic to create anything they wanted. And this wonderful eruption of interesting artistic graphical ideas across all these chairs, which caused the faculty management to go absolutely spare and first accuse the students of defacing the chairs, and then because one of the students took a chair out into the workshops to do some work on it or out into the street or something, of stealing the chairs, and then demanded to know how quickly this stuff was going to be taken off. And the answer, of course, was, well, not until we do it again, we hope, at least a year. But of course, what it meant was that when you walked into that space, even the chairs spoke of the work that was going on there.
Very good.
And that's a really important idea. Whereas, of course, these are university chairs. This is exactly the same as the chair in my office.
You're lucky.
Actually, it's better than the chair in my office. And this is the same as the carpet in my office.
Going back to what you were saying about the sort of some of the key areas being split between the building, doesn't that lead to a distinct lack of like the community feeling?
Oh yeah.
I think we've got that in architecture because this is the postgraduate studio, but first and second studio, both of the third year studios right now in Norfolk building. And although we're meant to be getting to know it, it's incredibly difficult. Often like we're only on one day. It's difficult because